Chechen rebels celebrated their success today in keeping control of Grozny's presidential palace, but the Russians have other ideas. We had just started filming at the palace when it came under intense shell fire. Well, we've just pulled back from the presidential palace. We're now about a kilometre away, and as you can hear, there's a massive artillery bombardment of the building going on right now. But every time the Russians go on the offensive, the Chechens hit back. Today we saw more heavy street fighting in the center of Grozny. It's David against Goliath, and the Chechens, outnumbered and outgunned, have the upper hand purely because of their exceptionally high morale and motivation. The Russians, though, have the advantage of air supremacy, and this afternoon they used it to try and crush rebel resistance in the Chechen countryside. On the ground, the result was death and devastation. When we arrived in the little village of Shali, we found a market had been completely destroyed. The Chechens say as many as 100 people were killed or injured here. But aerial attacks on civilian targets like this are hardly going to win the war for Russia. This man told me that his cousin died in the air raid. The people here, he says, were peaceful. They were poor and just trying to make some money in this market. A few miles away, a simple tractor had been hit. The victims are said to have been a man and a boy. The Russian army are now more than 3 weeks into this war, and they're digging in for a long Caucasian campaign. It took the army of the Tsars decades to suppress the Chechen people. Russia's defense minister has boasted that this time it would need only a few days, but already he's been proved wrong. Ben Brown, BBC News, Chechnya.
Despite President Yeltsin's attempts to win public backing for his Chechen campaign, images of dead Russian soldiers on the streets of Grozny are now reaching Russian television viewers. Tonight, a delegation of Russian members of parliament returned to Moscow from Chechnya and urged the president to halt the assault on Grozny and resume talks with Chechen leaders.
The reality of what's happening in Chechnya is beginning to get through to Russian television viewers. Graphic shots of dead Russian soldiers are now being shown on news bulletins, and public discomfort is growing.
I can't bear to watch the TV anymore. I used to believe in Yeltsin, but now I don't trust him.
I voted for him at the start, but now I realize he is a traitor surrounded by criminals.
Demonstrators were out on the streets of Moscow today, reflecting a new opinion poll which shows that 63% of the population is against the military operation. Many people want the Russian troops to pull out of Chechnya immediately, but they know that's unlikely to happen.
The problem is that the government has gone too far already, and in order to stop fighting, they have at least to record some results to say this was a victory, this was a task of the whole operation, be it just having control over Grozny or anything else. But I'm afraid they would not withdraw before achieving any obvious results in this fighting.
The Boris Yeltsin of today appears stiff and formal and rather unwell, much like one of the old Soviet leaders. The image is in stark contrast to the energetic Yeltsin of 3 years ago, when he climbed onto a tank outside the White House and set Russia on course towards democracy. His critics claim his flirtation with democratic principles is over. They include some of his former close allies, men like the ex-Prime Minister Yegor Gaidar. He says the Chechen operation could be followed by a military takeover in Moscow, and he wants the West to act.
I'm sure that what happens in Chechnya now is far away from being the Russian internal business. The scale of the casualties